Isn't it funny how we're always talking about boomers and millennials? We analyze Gen Z like they're some newly discovered life form. But there's this whole generation stuck right in the middle that gets overlooked, almost like they're invisible. I'm talking about Generation X, the people born roughly between 1965 and 1980. They're the coworkers you have who just put their heads down and get the job done without any fuss. They're the parents who can sometimes feel a bit emotionally distant, the ones who literally built the modern internet but have no interest in posting a picture of their avocado toast. And here's the thing that no one ever really gets. Their entire psychology is probably the most profoundly misunderstood of any generation alive today. They were the very first mass generation of latchkey kids. Let me paint you a picture. It's 1978. You're 8 years old, and you get home from school to a house that's completely empty because both of your parents are at work. You have no smartphone, there are no video doorbells, and there is absolutely no way for anyone to even know if you made it home okay. You had to let yourself in, figure out your own snack, get your homework done in silence, and just wait for someone to come home. A study that came out in the American Journal of Orthopsychiatry revealed that by 1984, an estimated 7 million children between the ages of 5 and 13 were regularly left to themselves after school. That forged an entire generation that learned you simply cannot always rely on somebody else being there for you. That silent house did a lot more than just teach them to be self-sufficient. It drilled into their heads the concept that your choices have very real consequences, the kind you can't just talk your way out of. And when their parents finally did come home, you never had to guess where you stood. The rules were straightforward, and the consequences were immediate. Nobody was sitting you down to have a long discussion about your feelings. If you stepped out of line, you paid the price for it on the spot. Psychologically, this fostered what experts refer to as a high-contingency environment, where actions were directly tied to outcomes with zero delay. Your brain got wired to anticipate the fallout of your actions in real time, which helps explain why Gen Xers tend to think 3 steps ahead in ways that can seem baffling to younger generations. Gen X spent their youth watching their parents talk a big game about family stability, only to then see them drive divorce rates through the roof all through the 70s and 80s. They watched people dedicate their entire lives to a company just to get a pink slip the moment the next wave of layoffs was announced. The whole world was telling them, just work hard, follow the rules, and everything will turn out okay. But then they watched the rules completely change right in front of them. So, a psychologist might call their worldview defensive pessimism, but a Gen Xer would just call it being realistic. It isn't that they are cynics, not really. It's more that they've constructed this kind of emotional armor around themselves. They might hope for the best, but deep down they're always expecting the rug to get yanked away, because frankly, that's what their experience taught them would happen. And that is a major reason you hardly ever hear from them on social media. They came of age in an era when privacy was simply the default setting. Back then, if you messed up as a kid, maybe 5 or 6 people found out about it, and that was the end of the story. There were no smartphones, no viral videos, just some cringe-worthy memories that stayed in someone's basement or a high school parking lot. So this idea of plastering your personal life all over the internet for complete strangers to judge doesn't feel exciting to them. It feels incredibly risky. This has nothing to do with not understanding technology. It's about having learned from a young age that the less people know about your business, the safer you are. Gen X essentially turned irony into a defense mechanism. Tell a joke, keep things at a comfortable distance, and find a way to laugh it off before it really stings. You can see exactly how that mindset developed. They were raised in the shadow of the Cold War, a time when teachers would talk about impending nuclear war like it was just another Tuesday. They did duck and cover drills in school as if hiding under a desk was going to save you from anything. When you grow up hearing adults say the world is about to end and then tell you not to sweat it, you learn to hold 2 opposite ideas in your head at once, and you always keep a bit of a wall up just in case. But this is where it gets really interesting.
Out of all that chaos, Gen X forged a particular work ethic that is still incredibly distinct. They don't broadcast it, they don't make a big deal about it, they just get the work done. This way of thinking was hammered into them by jobs that sound almost ancient now, like delivering newspapers at 5 in the morning, packing groceries at the local supermarket, or running a fast food counter where you had to do the math in your head when the register went down. These weren't for building a resume, they were a raw boot camp for the adult world, where a 12-year-old was responsible for getting the news to an entire town. They saw their parents' generation get gutted by corporate downsizing. As a result, they have zero faith in loyalty to a company, but they are intensely loyal to their own skills. They know they can't stop the company from laying them off, but they can absolutely control whether they're the most indispensable person in the building when those layoffs start. There's a fascinating contradiction right at the center of the Gen X psyche. They're probably the most independent generation, but also the most quietly cooperative. They'll never ask for directions, they'll figure it out themselves, something they've been doing since they were 8 years old. But if you're the one in a bind, they'll be there, with no drama and no need to post about their good deed. This comes from a time when your friends became your family out of sheer necessity because the adults were gone. And we have to get into their relationship with authority because it is messy. They're moved by competence, not by a fancy title on a business card. If you know your stuff and have earned your spot, they will follow you to the ends of the earth. But if you're just an empty suit who lucked into a corner office, they have absolutely no time for you. Gen X is suspicious of authority because they grew up watching incompetent leaders make one terrible decision after another. From the Watergate scandal to Iran-Contra to the disastrously slow response to the AIDS crisis. They were hit with harsh economic realities their parents never had to face. The youngest of them walked out of college straight into the dot-com bust. The oldest members were reaching their professional peak right when the 2008 financial crisis decimated the economy. They have been through the financial ringer time and again, which is why they're so much more likely to have a side hustle. It's not because they're natural-born entrepreneurs, it's because life taught them that no safety net is permanent. Gen X often deals with what psychologists have labeled a form of anxious self-reliance. In a crisis, they're the people you want in the room, but that coolness under pressure often stems from a deep-seated refusal to ever depend on anyone else. Research from the Journal of Adult Development reveals that Gen Xers are significantly less likely to seek out social support when they're going through a hard time. It isn't because they lack people to turn to, it's because asking for help feels like admitting you failed. The same independence shaped how they viewed knowledge itself. Before the internet, information had a different kind of gravity. A Gen Xer would spend hours in a library, sifting through a card catalog, searching for that one single book that might hold the key to what they needed to know. Getting information had a real cost in effort and in hours, and because of that, what they learned had more value to them. There's a term for this in cognitive psychology, deeper encoding, where the information you have to struggle for is what really sticks in your memory for good. They figured out how to fix things with their own two hands, because that's just what you did when your bike chain popped off or the TV reception went fuzzy. You weren't calling some repairman. You'd flip that bike upside down, get your hands covered in grease, and just work it out. This process built a kind of mechanical sixth sense, a core belief that with a screwdriver and a little bit of patience, you could pretty much conquer the physical world. And now they're watching their own kids navigate a totally different reality. A reality filled with helicopter parents, constant monitoring, and every moment being posted on social media. They poured all the attention they never received into their own kids, but at times they can't help but wonder if they've made them a bit too fragile, too reliant on others, too much in the spotlight. Because from a Gen X perspective, being seen is the same as being a target. The reality is, Gen X might just be the last group of people who truly grasp what it feels like to just sit with your own thoughts, to be bored out of your mind, to find a solution without instantly Googling the answer. They aren't superior to other generations, just built differently, forged in a very specific sliver of history when the old world was crumbling and the new one was still taking shape. They're the generation that bridges the gap, and bridges rarely get any of the glory. They're simply there, doing the heavy lifting, holding it all together, and asking for nothing in return. And perhaps that's the most defining Gen X trait of all, not really caring if anyone is even watching. If this really resonated with you, I'd appreciate a subscribe. And if you want to help support these kinds of deep dives, hit that join button to become a channel member. I would be genuinely grateful for your support.